Hello again. It's been a while since I've made any videos regarding the Raspberry Pi mini computers, but recently the Raspberry Pi Foundation have been very active and surprised us, I think, a little bit by producing two new machines. And those are the machines I'd just like to have a quick look at now. I'm not going to use this video to show you how to install them or how to set things up, just to unpack them and really have a little quick look at them. I'll make a video a bit later regarding the actual setting up of the two machines. The first one was a bit of a surprise and rather exciting and difficult to get hold of, and that was of course the production of the Raspberry Pi Zero. Now, I happen to subscribe to Magpie magazine, and I was really excited, which was lucky because they are difficult to get hold of, really excited when through the post came this. And it's the Magpie magazine, and on the front, if you can just see, there's the Raspberry Pi Zero, and this is a landmark publication really, because it's the first magazine to actually give away a microcomputer for free. Of course you can buy them for about £5, but this was actually free. Yeah, I had to subscribe to the magazine of course, but to get one for free is absolutely brilliant. So we're going to be having a look at that in a minute. In fact, I'm almost loath to destroy it and to take it off, because it's pretty rare really actually to get the magazine, and it was issue 40 is the one you're looking for, and these are still in, even if you order them directly, they're still a bit difficult to get hold of. So that was one thing that happened, and I've got that, and we'll be unwrapping that in a minute. The other thing that happened was the announcement of the Raspberry Pi 3. Now, on the magazine again, there it is, the Raspberry Pi 3. It's the new addition to the Raspberry Pi family, and a much more powerful machine, and we'll be looking at that in a minute. I ordered it, of course, immediately, but I was a little bit surprised when I came in and there was a letter through the letterbox saying that they couldn't deliver the package. Now, the Raspberry Pi, as we know, is a very tiny computer, and all my previous ones have come in little jiffy bags and been through the letterbox with no problem. So the following later that afternoon, I went up to the post office to pick up my Raspberry Pi 3, and was a little bit surprised when the lady behind the counter offered me this. Now, a bit surprised because I thought, oh my goodness, they've sent me 20 Raspberry Pi 3s, but I don't want 20. But when I shook it, you always shake parcels, don't you? It's the only way to. I could hear the rattling inside, and I guess there may only be one, but one which was not packed particularly well, or the packaging a bit overdone. So we'll be opening that one in a moment, just to have a look and see what actually is inside. So that's my two purchases. What I'd like to do now is to have a closer look at both these new machines and see what we're actually getting for our money for the Raspberry Pi 3, which cost about £30, same as the original, and the free or very cheap Raspberry Pi Zero. So let's have a look at those. So first of all, let's unpack it and see what we've actually got. So we'll take the packaging off here, out of its anti-static bag, which we would expect it to be in, and we'll have a look at the machine itself. Very tiny. Let me compare it with the original Raspberry Pi, and you'll see how small this thing actually is. So there's the standard size Raspberry Pi, and there's the Raspberry Pi Zero. So it's quite a lot smaller, as you can see. In fact, it's probably about it's less than half the size. So there's the machine. What we have on this machine is quite interesting. First of all, the 40-pin GPIO outputs and inputs are non-populated. In other words, there's no pins in them at all. You have to solder onto these. It has a the chip in there is, what's the chip? It's the, goodness me, I can't remember. Oh yes, it's the Broadcom BCM 2835 on the chip, the same one that powered the original Raspberry Pi, if you can see that one. Let's move in just a little bit closer so we can get a better look at this. You can get it in the picture a wee bit more there. Okay, so it has that. All the sockets on it are micro. There's a micro SD card socket, which is at the end here. So it's a micro SD which fits there. A mini HDMI port, which is this one. It has a micro socket for your power supply and a micro socket for your extension to your breakout box or your hub, because the actual USB port here has to be put into a hub to connect your keyboard and your mouse and various other bits and pieces. It comes with 512 megabytes of RAM, which is the same as the original Raspberry Pi, and it weighs only 9 grams, so absolutely ideal. Oh, sorry, did I mention the CPU? It's a BCM 2835, which is the same as the original. And it runs at 900 megahertz, and it's a single core ARM 11 chip. Okay, so that's basically the Raspberry Pi Zero. It doesn't have any Wi-Fi, or it doesn't have any Bluetooth or anything else on it like that. It's simply a no-frills machine to be used for things like Internet of Things and built into small projects, which it's ideal for. Small size and small weight, and quite an exciting piece of kit. Okay, so next in line is the this rather large package, which I'm now going to open and to discover what we have inside. And wow, yes, there's only one Raspberry Pi in there. There's a bit of an excuse for some packing, I suppose, which is not very much. And there is one Rattly Raspberry Pi. So I think you could have got 1, 2, 3. Well, you could have got 15, 20. You could have got about 15 Raspberry Pis in there. So let's get rid of the box and take it out. Throw the box down there, and we'll use that for something much bigger later on. And let's have a look at our Raspberry Pi 3 Model B. Right, let's unpack it. Again, as we would expect, there's some disclaimer paperwork, compliance and safety information, same as the other ones, and in there again a package with the Raspberry Pi 3 in it. And looking at it, first of all, it looks very similar to the Raspberry Pi 2B. Let me bring some more light on the subject. Okay, so here is the Raspberry Pi 3. It looks generally the same as the Raspberry Pi 2B, but let's have a look at it. The chip in the center of it, the SoC, was specially built for this particular device, and it's a Broadcom BCM 2837 chip, system on a chip, and it includes 4 high-performance ARM Cortex A53 processing cores, and it runs very, very fast. In actual fact, it runs at 1.2 gigahertz with 32 kilobytes level 1 and 512 kilobytes level 2 cache memory on it. It runs a video core, 4 graphics processor, and is linked to a 1 gigabit memory module on the rear of the board, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. The other thing we have on there is a wireless radio antennae, which is this tiny little thing here, and it's said to be very, very powerful, and it's built into the board itself, and it is able to provide wireless connectivity. The antennae is there. Sorry, the chip itself is just under the board. You can actually see it. You will when I turn it over. This is the aerial or the antennae, which gives a very sensitive connectivity to that wireless chip. It's also has the standard 4 USB connections here. It has an HDMI, standard HDMI connector here. It has a composite video output here, and it has the power supply, which is this little socket here. Now let's turn over and see what we have on the other side. First of all, we can see the memory chip, which is here on the reverse of the card. That is absolutely different from previous versions of Pi. And then we have the micro SD card for your micro SD card with your program and your operating system to be put on. The chip we were talking about, the radio chip, is this one, and it's so tiny that you can hardly read, well, you can't read without a magnifying glass, what's actually on it. Mounting holes are exactly the same as previous Pis, so there will be no issues there. And I think that's about it. Or did I give you wrong? I think this is the radio chip here. Yeah, that's a radio chip there. I'm not going to go into very much more detail on that, except to show you that it looks very similar, but it's about 10 times faster than the original Raspberry Pi. Well, thank you again for listening to my rantings about the Raspberry Pi family. I hope I've given you a little bit of information, or disinformation as it may be, about the two new additions to the Raspberry Pi family. If you have managed to get hold of a Raspberry Pi Zero, well done. If you've ordered your Raspberry Pi 3, I'm sure you'll enjoy using it and setting it up. I'm going to make a short video now about setting up the Raspberry Pi Zero and the Raspberry Pi 3. I'm not sure whether I'll do those as two separates, or probably I will, because it takes a wee bit of time to do the screen captures and things. It can be a bit confusing. But anyway, thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and I'll see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye.